Thank you guys all so much for coming out and listening. The support for episode number 1 was awesome last week, and it was super great for me to be able to tell my story to everybody who might not be able to interact with me on a daily basis. Our guest today on the second episode has been in the strength and conditioning realm for about 5 years now, from the age of 20. And in that time, boy, has he covered a lot of ground, from playing collegiate level baseball, coaching high school athletes, working as a personal trainer at the Edge, to making it to the big leagues with the Oakland Athletics, professional baseball organization. If everyone would please welcome the one and only head strength and conditioning coach for the Vermont Lake Monsters, Mr. Kevin Guild. You're very connected with your brother.
Yeah.
Right? And he went through, is he still currently going through weight loss journey?
Always. I mean, it's a process.
Yep.
Less so weight loss and more so, there's another plan. And more so just healthy lifestyle habits. Talking about Curtis, my brother, he's a doctor of chemistry. So he got his PhD maybe a year and a half ago now.
Mm-hmm.
But he went through that whole process. He got the 4 years of college, then almost 5 years of graduate school. And if you know grad students, they're generally not the healthiest of people,
Right.
Just from a lifestyle standpoint, because you have so much studying, you have so much time that's being taken from you. So with Curtis, it's been fun to watch him start to apply healthy concepts that I've studied and researched and tried to apply to clients. Since I was trained back in college.
Right.
It's been fun to watch his progression and his growth with it all. And it's something that I try to be involved in as well. It's incredibly hard to support your family and offer advice or wisdom, or especially when you're the little brother.
What do you think makes that the most challenging?
That's a good question. I would say pride, probably. Because I know when he tries to help me with my computer, I get all ticked off.
I can do this.
Yeah, exactly. I can figure this out. Yeah. So I would imagine pride is probably the biggest factor.
What's been the most successful thing that you've been able to accomplish as far as how to convey to them that this is something that they need without having them get too prideful or defensive or whatever? How do you kind of lower them down out of that defensive mode to be like, hey, you should probably start taking care of yourself? I think a lot of people, especially in this industry, like you said, could relate to that. So what methods for you have been the most successful in conveying to family members that this stuff is important?
That's good. I mean, it would apply to anybody that I work with too. It's listening and patience.
Yep.
Those are probably the two biggest ones. It's really easy to get quick to advice. It's really easy to get quick to tips.
Mm-hmm.
And generally, that's, from my experience, that's been the worst way to go about it.
Yeah.
You're usually answering questions that aren't even there.
Right.
So listening and patience. Patience probably being the harder one of the two. It's really easy to just shut up. But it's harder to shut up and watch. So the patience aspect is certainly a big one, especially, say with Curtis, using Curtis as an example. To understand that it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
To understand his first year of graduate school probably wasn't the best time for me to be going to the gym with him at 5 a.m. when he's got a test 3 hours later.
Right.
So understanding where they are and being patient has paid dividends.
Mm-hmm.
Not just with Curtis, just with anybody.
Right. And allowing them to do it at their own pace, I think, is really difficult.
Yeah,
too.
For sure.
And one of the biggest strategies I've used is just trying to ask probing questions. I mean, I deal with this stuff with my parents all the time. Like, my dad has Parkinson's disease, and he was training with me here for a while and then stopped, and symptoms start to come back. And at a certain point, it seems like people start to give up, when they haven't even really given enough time for it to start to work.
That's a good point. I think, another one too, is trying to define what a success looks like.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
Both of us are personal trainers. Really, at the end of the day, we're coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And success to us, especially being type A OCD folks, is generally very different than somebody that you're working with, especially a family member.
Yep.
Because you both of us would like to see family members be, magical, creative beings of perfection.
But know everything.
Exactly.
And they can do no wrong.
Exactly.
It's really hard to have those conversations with people.
For sure.
Because you being the youngest, like I'm a middle child, and trying to, once you become like your own adult and you're trying to tell the person that raised you that the way that they're living their life isn't the most like healthy way to go about things. It's a tricky conversation. It's really hard for me it's a lot easier to just avoid the conversation and just kind of like wish that things will get better. You know what I mean?
I've noticed that. Kind of recently. I had a girlfriend, Jess, there, mm-hmm. and she's all excited about starting to train, and it's been fun, trying to provide something to her,
right.
Answering questions when they're there, trying to just be supportive. But I've also found that it is extremely hard to speak professionally or speak about something that you're comfortable with and know in a professional setting to somebody that you're intimate with and close with. Mm-hmm. So that's been a challenge just recently.
Yeah.
So I connect with that.
If anybody out there has any advice on any psychologist out there to have these conversations with people, I mean, I talk about that stuff when I do my weekly therapy bits and having those critical conversations with people and what it actually looks like. A big thing has been just asking questions. The hardest thing about asking questions and trying to just allow people to self-discover is then being okay with their answers. If you're saying, well, what do you think that coming into the gym and doing XYZ would do for you? And then they say, nothing, I don't really care and I don't want to do it. Having to accept that outcome. When in your mind, that it's beneficial, I think.
Yeah, there's a it's kind of, I think it's in all industries, motivational interviewing. Mm-hmm. Where you I remember when I first read that, just back in a college class, and my initial reaction was, that's leading. It was like, objection, Your Honor, that's a lead question.
Right.
Because,
yeah.
Because you're basically you ask a question, and then no matter what they answer, you're going to try to basically steer them in the right direction.
Exactly.
Quote unquote right direction.
Right.
And so, like, what you're saying there, to be able to listen to the answer without judgment and without reaction, that's the hardest thing for anybody, let alone, somebody that you're trying to help or support or actually provide something to.
Yeah, 100%. Have you had to deal with any of this stuff with your athletes? I mean, tell me about your process. You shipped away back in March.
Yeah, what a year, man. Yeah. What a year.
Let's get into that. Tell me, like, day one. I know the first podcast we kind of talked about you getting the job offer. Mm-hmm. So what happened? Let's start there. What was this year like for you?
This year was a whirlwind. I'll tell you that. I shipped out, to use that term, to Arizona, 1st of March, mm-hmm. right around that time. And got to spend spring training out there, which was chaos.
And this is at the Oakland A's private.
So there's every major league organization has a major league and a minor league spring training complex. Okay. The A's are based out of Mesa, Arizona, mm-hmm. and they have Hohokam, which is the big league complex, and then down the street you have Fitch, which is minor league complex, and people go back and forth. They call it going across the street, that kind of thing. But we had 5 or 6 strength coaches, and you take 6 levels of baseball, and you got, say, 30 players a level working with 150 to 200 athletes. Right. So from a coach to player standpoint, it was crazy. It was the most coaching that I think I've done in that short period of time. Basically, the entire month of March was walking around a weight room or walking around a baseball field and coaching. So that
on
was,
movement mechanics specifically.
yeah. I guess coaching is so broad.
Yeah.
When you're working with pro athletes, you know, you like to think that it's a whole nother level, and you know the movement mechanics of things, and you can coach it. It's basic stuff. You know, the guys that I work with, especially here in Vermont, are, you know, young Latin American players,
Mm-hmm.
and guys directly out of college or directly out of high school.
Yep.
Their first year in baseball, getting ready for pro ball, and walking around a spring training complex, you have everybody from that young Latin American player all the way up to a AAA, you know, a 4A guy who's, you know, in his 30s.
Mm-hmm.
And so obviously you have different training ages, you have different different coaching strategies,
Right.
different ways that you interact with them too.
Mm-hmm.
So to boil it down to one thing, you can. It's impossible.
Right.
I mean, there were days where you would coach. You know, you'd be coaching one player in broken Spanish, and and then the next day you're coaching somebody who, you know, went down to Hudson, Mass, and has worked with Eric Cressy for the last 8 years and probably knows more about strength and conditioning than you do. You know,
That's a very interesting dynamic to think about that, and like talking to people about, oh, what's your training age and what's your history like, and then they come out and just like bing bang boom, and you're like, oh man.
For sure.
I don't know if I can help you. And then the language barrier. So you learned Spanish, or you're trying to learn Spanish?
Well, I've thought about how much Spanish I've learned, and I can't take my Spanish outside of the weight room because it's predominantly profanity.
Okay.
And then it's predominantly like 2-word commands.
Okay.
You know,
Yep.
That's actually been a major focus this off season,
Mm-hmm.
is trying to get up to a conversational level of Spanish, because that just helps you connect with some of those young kids.
Yeah, it's all about the relationships.
Yeah. I mean, their English is probably just as good as my Spanish, so you end up having some pretty great conversations that way.
Are you ever in conversation and crossing over between both?
Oh yeah. It's a little joke from our assistant coordinator. It's just the Spanglish way.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, a lot of pointing and gesturing, and then it's kind of funny too, because with Latin Americans, Spanish, it's different than, you know, if you go to Spain,
Right.
and listen to Spanish there. Like I've seen a Dominican-born player and a Venezuelan-born player talk to each other and
Mm-hmm.
not understand each other, because it's Spanish, but there's so many different
Dialects.
Yeah, dialects, innuendos, whatever
Right.
you want to say. So it's less about learning the nuts and bolts of Spanish and more about being able to communicate.
Right. In any way that you can.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'll never forget. There's this guy Ari. I don't know if I actually don't remember his last name. But he was down in Keene, New Hampshire, when I was down there in college, and he had some sort of injury to his leg. I think he broke his leg, and so he was on crutches, but he was a yoga instructor.
Yep.
And I'll never forget him saying, he was an older guy, and he was like, that was the best thing that could have happened to me as a yoga instructor, because I couldn't demonstrate.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't move with him. I couldn't feel the class out. I couldn't walk around
Right.
and talk to individuals.
Mm-hmm.
So he had to coach basically from crutches.
Yep.
It felt like that at times this summer. You know, I would reference that quite a bit, where I was sitting there, I was like, this is coaching from crutches.
Yeah.
You know, where you have to completely change things that have worked in the past.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would imagine that the cueing and the gestures and all of that things are interpreted very differently with that language barrier.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can lock them down. I'm sure you've had the same scenario. You've got somebody trying to do, you know, X movement, you know, and every cue that you do leads them farther away from X movement.
Yeah.
You know,
confuses them even
yeah, exactly.
more.
You know, you're standing on your head trying to get them to do this, you know, and you're doing more harm than good.
Mm-hmm.
So something I really found myself doing a lot of this past year was coaching less.
Okay.
And providing the environment for, say, a movement to take place.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's kind of been big in strength and conditioning the last few years, the whole external cueing, making sure people are thinking outside of their body so that they're not trying to cue, individual muscles. You're not poking them in the butt saying turn your glutes on.
What does that look like?
Well, I mean, I guess the classic one would probably be, say, on a squat, when you have somebody squat to a bench
Mm-hmm.
versus, sit your butt back.
Right.
Something like that. Even though, disclaimer,
It's a
your
little
butt should go
tactile
straight down on a squat.
feedback.
Yeah. So forcing people into the right movements, like we were talking about earlier, where it's trying to ask questions that lead people to the right answer.
Mm-hmm.
It's providing external cues or the environment, or I've seen you with people with squatting next to a wall.
Mm-hmm.
And just things that force people in those movements.
Right.
When you have a language barrier, that becomes all the more important. Because you can just put them right in that spot and say, this is what you're doing.
Right. I would imagine a lot of visual cueing, you know what I mean? Demonstration from you and saying, do as I do.
I was reading a study the other day that was, it was I forget what the title of it was, but it was basically a monkey and a person, and the person was trying to teach the monkey how to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And they were measuring, the brainwaves.
Yep.
And they found that the monkey, just by watching the person do the movement, had similar brain patterns to the person actually doing the movement.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it was just, I guess, a confirmation bias.
I gotta write this down.
Yeah, it was confirmation bias, but at the same time, it's like, demonstrate your movements.
Right.
Which is, which I know some of us strength coaches really struggle with, because sometimes we'll have athletes that can do movements that we can't do.
Yeah. And like, I can't Olympic lift. No way. I think my body would just break down.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I'm right there with you. Did you hear about me and Sam's study the other day there?
Give the people a little background about that conversation that we had about the broad jump.
This is why I like talking with some of these guys. The initial conversation was, what's the best way to improve power?
Mm-hmm.
And
the textbooks got opened.
Yeah, Sam's kind of a by the book guy. I'm kind of a by the book guy. But even then, I think both of us disagreed with the book, and then the book disagreed with each one of us individually in different ways.
Yep.
So what it came down to was, power test was a broad jump. What's the best way to improve the broad jump? My argument was you broad jump. His argument was you Olympic lift.
Mm-hmm.
So
I was on Sam's team, the lowly athletic trainer over here.
Yeah, fair enough. You guys know more about a whole bunch of different. Anyway, so it was a 2-week study. There were supposed to be 6 training days. Both of us did 3 training days. He had his powerlifting competition the day before we tested.
There was no control, by the way.
Zero control group. Yeah, you were supposed to be the control group too.
I didn't do a good job of the control.
So it was a poorly done study, that's for sure. I don't know if peer-reviewed is in its future. But it came out to the Olympic lifting improved broad jump performance.
By how much?
On short amount of sleep. I think his went up 4 inches. And mine didn't even budge, which it was kind of funny too. I was probably 5 pounds heavier, and both of us were coming off like 5 hours of sleep and 8 hours in a car, and he still broad jumped 4 inches more. I was pretty impressed. I thought he set the bar low initially.
You're calling him out.
That was my first reaction, because the math didn't make sense. I'm sitting there like, that's
4 inches in 2 weeks.
Yeah, seriously. So I've been power cleaning every day now for the last couple weeks. So, anyways, yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna bring that to the table with your athletes this year. So, what, as far as your coaching with them, what's the difference between your coaching style during the off season when you're at the training camp, and what are they doing in season?
That's a good question too. It's kind of cold in here too.
I'm sorry, I can
jacket on.
I try to turn the heat on.
Nice. No, I'd say the biggest difference obviously is the games. You have a game schedule to work around.
How often are the games?
Every day, man. Every day. Baseball. Yeah, I know here we play 72 games in it's like 80 days or something like
that. My God. Do you worry about overtraining with these guys doing stuff like that?
Depends how you define overtraining.
Yeah.
Over baseballing maybe.
Yeah.
So it's a totally different strategy. Probably actually more along the athletic training lines. Um, our athletic trainer with the Lake Monsters is this guy Toshi.
Okay.
He's terrific. He's one of those. He's a type A guy. Always has things in line. But working with him during the season, the biggest goal obviously is to get them ready to play that night. During the off season, during spring training, you're playing for a job, and you're also you're in a developmental stage.
Yep.
You know, you can train to work out. You can periodize their lifting and say, you know, we'll accrue volume here. You'll get stronger. You'll get faster. You'll get bigger. This will be great.
Do the athletes have separate goals on an individual level? I mean, like, how much are you working with them one-to-one or in small groups versus like the entire team is in the weight room at the same time?
It's a good question. There's one-on-one interaction every day. Our big thing with the A's is touch points. Making sure that you're having those touch points on a day-to-day basis so that you can feel these guys out.
Right.
From a coaching standpoint, you're usually, in season with the Lake Monsters, I'll usually have 5 or 6 guys training at a time. During spring training, it'll be bigger numbers, but you'll have more coaches. So I would say generally you're coaching 5 to 10 athletes at a time, but you're hopefully having touch points with each and every one of them.
Every day.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sweet. And then how'd they do this year?
Good. We had a heck of a year. It was a year. I learned a lot being my first year in professional baseball. I was really opened up to the business side of things. This was a year where there were quite a few transactional moves. During the year, we had players going out. We had players coming in.
How often does that happen within the minor league setting? I mean, are you going to have a completely new roster this year?
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully.
It's that fast of a turnaround.
Definitely.
That's crazy.
Generally, you'll have a few guys come back for year 2. They're generally not that thrilled about it because they'd like to keep moving up. Right. Every step is a little bit closer to the big league dream. But it will generally be new during the course of the year. I mean, this past year was an outlier, but you'll have player moves maybe once a week, every couple of weeks. So then that really causes a challenge, and it challenges strength coaches to communicate, which is something that I think we can all get better at.
Yep.
We did a really good job of it this year. If you have a new player coming in, making sure that you have that player's backstory. That was a big challenge, and required more touch points.
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome. What else was I going to ask about? How old are these guys?
Generally they're anywhere between 18 and 23.
Okay. Right in the prime.
Yeah, for sure. Your college guys are generally junior signs. So they'll be 21 coming out of college and turning 22 when they get to you.
Yep.
And then your Latin guys are generally 18, 19.
Awesome. Yeah. So where are you headed? What are your big goals?
Professionally? Professionally, I think my big goals are just like a lot of other strength coaches in professional baseball. It's to move up. It's to hopefully continue to progress as a strength coach.
Yep.
I think what professional baseball does for you really well is it defines your weaknesses. If you have weaknesses as a coach, which we all do, they will become very apparent when you're coaching every single day. So I guess my biggest goal would be to continue to progress, be it from a title standpoint, from a position standpoint, or from simply a skill acquisition standpoint. And then my second big goal would be to not be cynical.
Okay. Speak a little bit more about that.
That's a dad quote.
Okay.
His big goal for his life is to never be cynical. I know in our industry it's challenging at times. I know in professional baseball it's long hours. in personal training. It's long hours and weird hours, early mornings, late nights. There's negative feedback you can get if clients aren't, progressing or players aren't progressing. You can get blamed for things that maybe you are or are not a part of. There's a lot of opportunity to be negative and to be cynical.
Yep.
So I would say to be able to stay in this industry as long as I can without getting cynical
about it.
Yeah.
Nice. For anybody who would like to kind of follow in your footsteps and get into the professional industries of strength and conditioning, what advice would you have for them?
There's no path. There's no, do this and this will happen. I think it more comes down to how you conduct yourself on a daily basis. That's of pivotal importance because how you conduct yourself on a daily basis defines your relationships with the people around you. And generally you will not get opportunities without having good people around you. I've always said opportunity is the mixture of preparation and luck. Luck generally comes from those around you, and then preparation is all on you.
Right.
So if you conduct yourself in a professional manner, if you continue to progress personally and are prepared for when that opportunity comes, hopefully the people around you will give it to you. I know with me getting into professional baseball, it was exactly that. It was opportunity, and it was luck. Finding somebody who was prepared for it,
right,
at the time.
And just being ready for the opportunities, I think. Being kind to people. You never really know, especially in those prime years of going, even in high school, like late high school going into college and then early on in the professional career, the people that you surround yourself with, you never really know when they're going to come back into play. So I think it's super important to make those connections early and just being kind and professional in any potential opportunity you have, whether it's clinicals or having an internship or your first job opportunity, because you never know when you're going to need to call back upon those people or those experiences to kind of move you forward.
Yeah, for sure. There was just a guy in here the other day, Larry, and he was recommending this book. I think it was The Go Giver. There's a little play on words instead of Go Getter.
Yep.
I think it was based around the idea of giving more than you receive and providing something. I agree with that for sure. I don't agree with the idea of giving with the expectation of receiving.
No.
I'll give a little. This is a great. I connect my entire strength and conditioning career to basically these few months I was at. My first job at a college was at a high school in Keene, New Hampshire. It was not paid well. I lived in the basement of the athletic director's house on a twin size mattress. And I would just get up in the morning and I'd go and coach high school athletes. It was like the biggest part of my day. I basically turned a maybe 2 or 3 hour day job into like a 10-hour day job. And so the weight room there hadn't been mopped in a while. And by a while, that could mean a lot of things. It was a long time. So I remember the first day I went in there and actually mopped the place. And it was all clean and nice and exciting. It was great. And I mopped it every Thursday night. I missed out on a lot of dates for months, mopping this thing every Thursday night.
How long did it take you to mop?
It took a while, man. It was because you like the janitorial closet was way down the hall, so you'd have to get that, and you'd have to set it all up, and the spigot would like the water didn't come out very fast. So actually, just preparing the thing would take half an hour, and then you mop. But I did that every Thursday for months, and the hallway that the weight room was on didn't have a janitor because I think the janitor had left for some sort of legal reason or something. And I'll never forget the day that they hired a janitor, and he came as a young guy. He's like 23, 24 years old, had a girlfriend and a kid at home. And he went out of his way that evening, because I remember walking in the next day and the weight room it was a Wednesday going into a Thursday. And I walked in on Thursday and the weight room was mopped. I was like, this is
what's going on
different.
Here?
Who the heck mopped this? I thought it was a kid initially. And then the janitor's name's Aaron came by. he's like, hey man, I saw that your weight room really needed mopping, which was a distinction of how good I am at mopping, I guess. And he's like, so I mopped it for you. And I also Dusty had pictures of like the tops of the lights where he'd like they had a bunch of dust and he cleaned it off and whatnot. But anyway, he went out of his way and cleaned the crap out of this weight room.
Nice.
Awesome. It's great. And didn't ask for it, and he did it for me. I've looked at that as the goodness of people showing up, because a few months later he needed to buy a computer for some job applications. He was looking to go back to school and get a different job, and I worked with Curtis, the genius computer guy, and we got him a laptop. And so I gave him a laptop, and I'll never forget the look on his face. Obviously, that feels great, giving somebody a gift like that.
That's awesome.
And to be honest, I probably gave him the laptop because he mopped my weight room and got the weight room on the weight room schedule.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the go-giver mentality, really playing a role right there.
Nice.
Done beautifully by Aaron.
Yep.
The custodian down in Keene. So
it's funny how when you start to change your mindset towards just giving without expectation, you really do receive a lot more than when you're giving with the expectation of receiving.
Yeah, there was a...
Even if it's just like, it's almost selfish in a way to like, because I do that all the time. You give somebody something, like the look on their face is enough.
For sure, for sure. And well, I think also, like you were asking about ways to get into strength conditioning and work your way up. Give to the industry.
I think that would be the top piece of advice.
Yeah. It's easy to give to your clients. Hopefully you're giving them something every day. It's easy to give back to your own environment. It's hard to give back to other professionals. I served as the New Hampshire state director for the NSCA, which I remember when I got the job, I was like, man, this is really cool. I put this on a resume. It was awesome, right? And I remember getting the previous state director on the phone. We talked for like 15 minutes. And in those 15 minutes, I took one thing from the conversation, and it was the job of being a state director was a complete labor of love. You were going to get asked to do a crap ton of stuff. There's a reason nobody wanted it. You're going to have to do a whole bunch of stuff. You're going to have to set up all this stuff, and you probably won't get too much out of it. It's not like you're going to get, money and fame and glory and whatnot.
Right.
And so I remember I served there for about a year and a half, did a clinic in Maine, New Hampshire, got to meet some great people there. So it did give back in that regard. And it gave back when I applied for the athletics job. That's one of the major topics of conversation was the fact that I'd spoken at an NSCA conference. They're like, how the heck did a 23-year-old get a presenting gig at an NSCA? And it was a labor of love. So it's easy to, I guess, go back in hindsight and say, wow, I did this and this happened, or I did this and this happened.
Right.
And there's no way to define what you're doing now, paying off in the future, but it sure does seem to work if you care a little bit and you give a little bit.
Yeah.
Good things will happen.
100%.
Yeah. Awesome.
Did you receive any questions from the people of Instagram?
Well, I did it on my the Guile Training Systems Instagram.
Okay. What do you got?
I'm horrendous at this social media stuff. I'll tell you that. Because I got exactly one response, and it was booty gains ? And it was from my girlfriend Jess.
Excellent.
So
okay, so let's talk about that gluteal development, Kevin. What's your number one tip for getting the glutes larger?
Well, that's a good question. I guess you could reference Brett Contreras and just say,
that guy.
Do hip lifts until you puke.
Yeah.
And then I would say eating as well is a big one. If you're looking for booty gains, you got to eat at a caloric surplus. So
a lot of people don't understand that.
Nah, that's fair. It's a lot of people get freaked out by how much food it actually is.
It's hard too.
Yeah.
To consume that much protein and eat that much when you're not used to it.
I have some experience as an exercise physiologist when I worked at the Edge.
Yep.
And we would do lipid profiles and all kinds of tests and assessments on these people. And it would always end in some sort of recommendation that was nutritional based. And the looks on their faces, we could say, you're currently eating 1,600 calories and you need 3,200 calories to lose weight. And they would sit there like, what are you saying? You know,
yeah.
So,
They're like, what do you mean? I thought I was supposed to eat like 800. And we're like, no.
It's like, actually, it's very counterintuitive, but yeah, you got to eat more and then you'll lose weight. But at the same time, you know, caloric surplus, you have to eat more than that initial number that freaks you out because that's how much you have to lose weight.
Right. And then on top of it, to actually have the muscle breakdown associated with the hypertrophy changes that are required, you're burning a lot of calories in those sessions that you have to now make up for.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So to answer Jess's question of booty gains, I would say resisted, eccentric, so hip flexion, and then I would say eat until you can't eat anymore, and your butt will grow 3 sizes that day.
Awesome. Okay, that's a good one. And we did receive one on the concept account, which is an interesting question. It's definitely going to not raise some eyebrows, but probably might cause some rifts amongst the staff. So I'm going to ask it 2 different ways.
Okay.
So one may go off the record, and depending on the answer, we'll see. The question was by James Bean. Who is the best coach at Concept Move?
Oh. Who is the best coach at Concept Move? I got to say Sam.
Okay, why?
Experience, more so than anything. I think experience is the greatest teacher. There are very few instances that I've seen where somebody with less experience is better, quote unquote, at something. So I don't see how you cannot say Sam. I mean, he's been in the industry the longest. He's had the most experience with the widest array of people. So I would say Sam, and also he's my current training partner.
Yeah.
And I'd like to keep that relationship strong.
A little bias. Okay. That's a good answer. I don't think anybody would disagree with you there. And then the way that I was going to phrase it is, who at Concept Move has impressed you the most?
That's a good question as well. To be frank, and this is probably the most politically correct answer of all time, I have been impressed by each and every one of these people in different circumstances. To quantify, it's really hard. Well, in the interest of burning only one bridge, I'll say Sam has impressed me the most.
Okay.
And the reason he's impressed me the most would be his interaction with the rest of the coaches and trainers, with his clients, and given his backstory and the lack of him being cynical.
I agree, 100%.
Yeah. So that's I guess I could expand on that. If to talk about being impressed by the other coaches as well, like Hannah came to mind. Mm-hmm. Just because I love how much time she puts into this place.
She's invested.
Yeah. And how much time she puts into her own personal development. She's studying for tests all the time, and she's part of all these different groups.
Yep.
She's like the freaking Energizer bunny. Just keeps going.
Yeah.
Tate blows my mind with his ability to book appointments.
He is one of the most impressive salesmen I've ever met.
I wanted to book an appointment with him just to chat with him.
Yeah.
So that one, Amy and Chelsea, they only impress me when they're on the floor together.
Mm-hmm. Their energy.
It's incredible the way that they I don't think they even look at each other.
Yeah,
just the environment that they create with the two of them training at the same time. It is a magical experience. Mm-hmm. I don't want Etta. She's from Fall River. That's impressive enough. I dated a girl from Somerset.
Okay.
And that's a fun area to be a part of. I'll tell you that. Go Etta. But yeah, I would say for most I would say Sam just for the amount that guy does. So.
Sam is here from 4:45 in the morning, and depending on the day until 7:00 at night.
Yeah, it's
his bedtime is 8:00.
Yeah,
he goes home and he eats, and I think he just goes to sleep and then comes back to concept.
Mm-hmm. It's the ultimate. To be honest, the ultimate strength coach mentality. That's why you see so much burnout in this industry.
Oh, yeah.
That's what blows my mind is he's not burnt out. He's got energy to keep going.
Yeah.
It's that first year and last to leave. He epitomizes it. He actually does it.
Yeah, no, he does.
The amount of strength coaches and personal trainers and just professionals in general that talk about how hard they work, and to see that guy, it's like call it, fuck it,
Yeah, that is good. I think we have a really, really sound crew of people here. I think we have someone that caters to every personality, every need. And I think our leadership is pretty incredible for only having been in business for a year. And it's been really nice to actually kind of let go of the reins and give people the opportunity and empower them to take on those roles and feel like they're in control of their own destiny. Yeah.
That's I know we talked a lot before you started this place, and the growth that I've seen just from you.
Oh yeah,
has been, as I guess, talking press. I didn't really count you in any of those either. Not saying that you would beat Sam.
I don't want to be on it.
I don't think you would anyway, right? That guy's a freak.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, in all seriousness, just the way that you've built the structure of this place for people to feed. Like we have a test prep and learning channel.
Yeah.
Where that has like the entire staff on at this point. I didn't know that this
asking questions.
Yeah. Just like the environment that you've created is really, that's impressive in its own right. I think it allows these impressive people to do impressive things and to just show what they're made of. It's fun to watch, man.
Yeah, it's been good. I'm super excited for this year coming up and seeing where we can take it. The sky's kind of the limit, and if anything, almost to a fault sometimes, if somebody has an idea that they want to do, I'm like, yeah, what do I need to do to help you? I'm going to get it up. Kevin Gild has been sending me a blog every single day, and I've gotten all of them up for the most part. I have 3 more from this week. I'm a little behind, but I am proud of myself for that.
Yes, seriously. I actually thought about that. It's pretty simple to write them, and then the amount of stuff that's coming through your front door, every morning. It's impressive that you put them up the same day.
Yeah, got it. It's on my list.
Yeah, that's
awesome. Well, thank you, Kevin, for hopping on the cast. I'm sure we'll have you again. Do you have any closing statements or anything you want to say to anyone before we kind of close up shop?
Yeah, I'd say thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
To be honest, it really is an honor to be a part of this, to see what you've created the last year, and to be able to be the second guy on the podcast. Pretty jacked up about it, especially because I'm sure this is going to be successful, just like all the other things that you've created really throughout your life, but more so the last couple of years.
It's fun too.
Yeah. So thank you for that opportunity.
Absolutely.
And then I'd also like to say hi to my mom and dad. And, that's what you do on these public accounts, right? So that'd be it, though. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Kev. Thank you so much, Kevin, for joining us today. Kevin Gild can be found on Instagram at Gild Training Systems, and he can also be reached via email at kevin@conceptmove.com. Thanks again, everybody, for listening. Please feel free to reach out to us here at Concept Move. We can be found at Concept Move on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and LinkedIn, or give us a call at 802-497-3240. Happy Thursday.